Welcome back. Thank you for checking out this bonus edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm 12 Kyle. Check this out. What I wanted to do on this one was I wanted to bring you inside the pod. Uh, First and foremost, before I even get started, let me shout out everybody that listens. And I know you probably thinking, oh, well, you always say thank you for listening, but no, I really do appreciate it because you know the interesting thing about these podcasts is that honestly, when you create them, you have no idea who's going to listen. And I am always taken aback when I find, out that people are listening. Not blown away or anything like that, but sometimes surprised because sometimes you don't know who's going to listen to what. Um, Two people I want to shout out in particular, my man on Twitter at Ivic Michael, um, and at Ghost, no, Grim Ghost. Shout out both of them. They hit me up here recently on Twitter, just thanking me for the content and everything. And wanted to shout them out because I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody that listens. I know millions of people listen and don't necessarily hit me on social media, but I wanted to shout them out in particular because they recently hit me up, thanking me. But I want to bring you inside the pod and just kind of give you just peel behind the curtains a little bit, um, to give you an idea as to how things come together as far as this podcast is concerned. Um, I always say, as far as the podcast is concerned, my goal is to bring you inside the room, right? I want to make it feel like when you're listening to me, you're in the room with me and we're having a conversation. We're sitting under the shade tree kicking it, or we're just, somewhere just vibing. And it's a conversation. It's something where I want you to understand and feel the content that is being created. Um, and shout out to my man Sean Heineman from the Scary to Remarry podcast. I was just recently on his podcast, and something he said was interesting. He said, I've been listening to you all these years. I feel like I know you. And that's perfect. That's kind of what I want, particularly for those who've been listening for a while. Because I obviously am giving a lot of myself and my experiences to you. So, yeah, I want you to know me. And I always say 12 Kyle and Kyle are the same person. It's not a different persona. But inside the pod, I do different things. And part of the creativity of this podcast is, for one, getting people to listen, but also, bringing my thoughts, my ideas, my creativity to the podcast. But with that being said, uh, I guess the first thing I should talk about is like the things that I like to talk about on this podcast. I will never put out a podcast talking about something that I don't want to talk about. This is my podcast. So I get to do it my way. I'm not one of those people who are going to, you know, sugarcoat something or give you content that, just doing it just because of doing it doing something that I think you want to hear. No, I'm going to talk about whatever I want to talk about. If I want to talk about frogs, then I'm talking about frogs. If I want to talk about the stock market, then I'm talking about the stock market. Luckily for you, I'm not talking about either. But just to give you an idea. But on this podcast, some of the themes are like my life experiences. Um, Definitely my life experiences. I've talked about that a lot. I had an episode from where I talked about one of my first episodes where I talked about the first and the last time that I got drunk. Uh, Talked about the time that I fired a loaded gun into the crib, and then acted like I didn't shoot the gun. Um, I talked about my game day experience as a football player at South Carolina State University in the 90s. Um, what else? I talked about the last play of a game that still haunts me and from high school. Um, so I talk about a lot of things as far as like my life experiences. Um, if you listen to this podcast, you know that there's going to be a lot of music talk. Um, because music is such a big part of what I do and who I am. Uh, and I'm assuming that if you're listening, or watching on YouTube, that you like music too. Um, Podcasts on music have there probably been more music. I can't. Well, I can't really say that there's been a lot of. There's been as many music podcasts as there been any other podcast, but I've talked about things from everything from the Source Awards in '95 to album reviews, countless album reviews of albums that turn 10, 20, 25, and 30 years old. Uh, this year, I'll probably do less than those, but I won't stop doing the album reviews. They'll just be albums that, whatever album I want to review. So if I want to review an album that came out in 1987, I'm not waiting until it's the 25 year or 30 year, or I'm just whatever album that I want to review, I'm going to review it. So be on the lookout for that. Um, Dating and relationships. I haven't done as many as I would have liked here recently, but I'm going to do more this year. Because I think that's something we can tap into. My homeboys, my homeboys who are single, they tell me, man, you ain't been on a date since Tupac was alive. So, given the fact that I've been married and been with the same woman for forever, but no, we're still going to talk about dating and relationships. There'll be some episodes on sex because I think that's important to talk about. And you can talk about it in a cool way, in a funny way, and not be all, and no disrespect to anybody that has all of the slut and all that stuff like that. I mean, that's cool for those who rock like that. That ain't. I'm going to entertain and educate and make you laugh. So that's what I do. Definitely sports. Huge sports fan, as you know. Like I said, play football in college. Huge sports fan in pretty much every sport, with the exception of hockey. A lot of nostalgia podcasts. That's what you're going to get inside this podcast. A lot of nostalgia. And the reason being is that, like, my generation is the last generation, I think, that grew up without the internet. We didn't have some of the technologies that most people have. There weren't cell phones and all this stuff like that. So, we spent a lot of time outside. We spent a lot of time communicating and getting to each other. We learned how to talk. We learned how to spit game to girls, and everything wasn't digital. So I have stories about that, and I think those stories are funny and they're very interesting because it's so vastly different from how things are now. I don't really get into politics, honestly. I think there may be 3 episodes on here that are political, and they're really good, if I do say so myself. But I don't really talk about politics because you guys can get politic talk in a gazillion other places. But if and when I do, it'll be on some dope shit. I can promise you that. Um, and I don't talk anything about current events. And there's no knock on anybody that does, but I really feel like if you want to hear about current events, you're not going to hear it on this podcast. And one of the great things about this podcast is because I don't talk about current events, nothing is dated. Um, so you could literally go to whatever episode I recorded in February of 2019 and not miss anything because it's not. But if I was talking about what happened on, I don't know, a reality TV show, if I was talking about what happened on, you know, in sports or whatever at that particular week, it'd be dated. Or if I was talking about what was happening in government or whatever the case may be, you get the point. But so no, it's not dated. It's not dated. So so you don't ever have to worry about being behind on a podcast. Shout out to my homegirl Maya from the We Did That Shit podcast. Maya binges listening to these podcasts, and Maya's like, "Hey, I'm catching up. I'm catching up." And I'm like, Maya, you ain't got to catch up. I know what she means, but you don't have to catch up. But I appreciate, Maya and people like Maya who listen, and they listen in volumes. That's cool too because you're gonna get a variety of different topics. How do I come up with the topics for these podcasts? That's interesting question. Well, I think first, like what I've done in previous years when I was doing the album, when I was doing so many album reviews, and again, I'm still gonna do them, but I'll go and look and see which albums came out 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, and I'll say, okay, well, hey, I want to talk about these albums. So those are the easier ones to do. I find the dates, put them on a calendar, and then kind of go from there. But the other topics, honestly, they kind of come to me. Sometimes you can get content or ideas from listening to other podcasts, and not necessarily doing the exact topic that you're listening to what they're talking about. Um, I was listening to a podcast one day, and somebody made reference to the best athlete that there was when that particular person was in high school. And I was like, you know what, that'd be a nice podcast. Let me talk about some of the athletes because nowadays everybody thinks, whoever the athlete is, whether it be LeBron, Brady, or whomever, they're the greatest of all time. This best thing since sliced bread. And maybe you didn't see, or maybe you weren't outside and you didn't get a chance to see some of the athletes that I saw. And so maybe in talking about that, I might change your mind. But anyway, the point of what I'm making is that one line about an athlete when that person was in high school gave me the idea of talking about it on my podcast. And that's not even what their podcast was about, but they gave me the idea. So I think sometimes when you listen to other podcasts, you can get ideas. You should be able to get ideas. You can get ideas from everywhere. And the more and more I do these podcasts, the more and more they become like songs, in a sense of they're the podcast is the song and I'm the songwriter. Sometimes you have to get the idea out. Sometimes the creativity in you have to kind of push it out, and you want to make sure that you get the content out for people to consume. And then sometimes you just got to get it out for yourself. You just got to talk about it, regardless of whether or not you put the content out or not. Guests. How do I choose guests on the podcast? I've made it my mantra to not have people on the podcast that I don't know and I don't rock with. And so, like, if somebody asks me, like, yo, can I be on the podcast? Like, if I don't know you, nah. It's like you coming to my house, like, yo, can I come in? No, you can't come in. It's COVID. But no, I have. And one of the first things I always ask people, I don't have to ask them now, but at one point in time, I'd ask, well, have you heard my podcast? Like, because I've had people approach me and say, hey, I would love to get on your podcast and talk about what I'm selling or what I'm pushing. No, this ain't that kind of party. It's not. So, if you just open up a business and you're trying to come on and promote your new hairline, that you're selling weave, this ain't it, because the people that listen to this podcast, and they're all over the world, they're not. They come here for a certain level of entertainment and fun. They didn't come here to be sold something. Now, I'm not telling you that there won't be people on here who will have their own business or have a product line or something like that. I'm not going to tell you that, but I have a lot of discretion as far as like who comes on the podcast. Now, there are people that I've talked to about coming on the podcast and they haven't been on yet, and that I'm going to get them on. But somebody just randomly just asking to be on the podcast, nah, you're not. Especially if I don't know you, we're not connected or anything like that. Nah, you ain't doing. I'm not having you on a podcast. It is what it is. And I think it's very important that if you come on a podcast that you've at least heard the podcast. I would never go on anyone's podcast that I've never heard before. And being a podcaster, we do that a lot. We go on other people's podcasts because people ask us to come on. And I don't mind doing it. I actually enjoy it because, if I'm on your podcast, the one thing I don't have to do any notes, I don't have to do any show prep. I just got to show up and talk. I could do that. But it's especially when I have my guests on, I'm very respectful of their time. And I work around their schedule. So if we start trying to nail down a date, I make sure that I'm available for one, and then I'm working around their schedule to make sure that I can make it happen. Um, but yeah, if like I said, if you looking to promote your business, or your little cousin want to come on here and rap, this ain't that kind of party. um, I think the first step, and a lot of people don't know this, um, as far as my creativity, one of the first things that I do is the cover art, which might be a little bit backwards, but I will not start the idea of a podcast until I have the cover art. So if the theme is, I don't know, um, something about playing outside, or let's just say childhood memories, I want to have a cover art of, kids playing outside, or kids hanging outside, or kids, doing something, playing stickball, playing basketball, what outside. And so I will search the internet for a picture first. So I got to have the cover art first. That's the first thing that I do. And I don't know why it's like that, but once I have the idea of going with a particular concept, I guess I have to get the cover art first. I guess it's like, a musician, that they got to have the drums, or they got to have a certain instrument. They got to have the beat there first before they start writing. So, some people write without a beat, but in this instance, I guess you could say I need a beat. So the cover art is my beat. Um, I don't have a lot of notes. Notes are always very minimal. Um, Research is minimal. Well, I'll take that back. If I have to do something where it's, let's say, an album review, yeah, I have to do my research, because more often than not, I haven't probably heard the album in a while. So I want to make sure I have notes on that and stuff like that. But I'm only jotting down a few words just to kind of trigger what I'm going to say. Um, but I will listen to an album. Um, if you listen to the fantasy drafts that me and Eclectic do on his podcast, the Eclectic Discussion Podcast, there's research in that. I have to, because I mean our topics are all over the place. But that will require some level of looking stuff up. And then lastly, one thing that's very important is to me is like the music that gets played on this podcast. I think that's very important, because I'm a music guy. It's very few podcasts, if you've been listening, it's very few times that you will turn this podcast on and don't hear any music. I started doing that years ago, because when I first started recording, there was a really bad echo in this room in my office, and I hated it. I was like, yeah, it used to kill me. And then I changed mics, and that made it a little bit better. But I was just like, nah, I got to do something. So the music was to kind of drown out the echo. And then, once things changed and I got a new mic, I didn't hear the echo as much. But there's been other instances where, like, it's been outside forces. There's an episode. When was that? It's about 2 years ago. I can't remember what it was on, but I know I recorded like January 2019, I think, somewhere around there. You can't see it, but there's a window right here, a bay window to my office. And right outside of that window is my front yard, obviously. And there's some bushes and shrubbery or whatever, and garden, all that good stuff. So for whatever reason, I'm recording it, and I'm not even paying this any attention. And it's the summertime. It's a loud ass cricket outside this window, and this cricket is making so much noise. It's just cricket noise. And I'm like, I didn't hear it until actually I was done with the podcast. And I was like, damn, that cricket's loud. And then I go back and listen to the podcast, and you can hear it on the mic. And I'm like, oh shit, I can't put this podcast. And it was a dope podcast. I was like, I can't put the podcast out without, with this noise. And I was like, okay, I'm going to have to put some music behind this just to kind of drown. Because it literally sounded like the cricket was right here. sitting on my desk. But long story short, I'm all into music, and I'm always very selective about the music that's played. But I'm also interested sometimes in switching things up, and I like it sometimes when people will say, hey, what was that song playing at the 8 minute mark? Like that. So um, I don't play as much music as I used to because I think it's very important that the music kind of balances out. I don't have to. I guess the best way I can describe it, there was a point where I ran the music the entire podcast. I don't really do that a lot now. It's more or less I'll put it in segments of the podcast, and that's cool, and kind of breaks up the sound, if you will. But yeah, I just wanted to get on here and kind of give you a behind the scenes look at the podcast, so you can have an idea as to how the magic is created. That's going to do it for this episode. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast. Remember, this podcast drops every Thursday at midnight. And from time to time, we will be dropping bonus episodes on Sundays at midnight. That's going to do it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for checking out this bonus edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm your boy, 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000.